Welcome to the Chapelcast. This is a bi-weekly podcast about the people and the life of the chapel. Subscribe to us from anywhere you listen to your podcasts and follow us on Instagram at the Chapelcast or go to our website, thechapel.org.
So excited to have Jenny Simmons here. And so with Jenny here this week to speak at Simply Christmas, we thought, wow, what a great opportunity to get to know you a bit more. Consider you a friend of the chapel now. Mm-hmm. And so we just want to spend a few minutes with you.
Thank you.
Just talking to
Thanks
you.
for having me. This is like the most lovely, I'm serious, the most lovely community of people. Like people were so warm and welcoming. And
Oh, thank you.
everything was done with such excellence, like attention to detail. And it was just a beautiful
I appreciate that.
event from top to bottom.
Well, you can come back anytime then.
Thank you. I would love that.
So where are you off to next? Let's start with an easy one. Where are you off to next?
Well, so I'm actually not on the road right now.
Okay.
I was for a really, really long time. And then I've been off the last 2 years. Actually, I've had a lot of health issues. So I had a bunch of surgeries the last few years. Wow. And I started seminary.
Wow.
And so I'm in my second year getting my MDiv with the hopes of being like a hospice chaplain.
Wow,
Oh,
that's
sort of
exciting.
where I'm headed. So where I'm off to next is Hebrew Bible 2.
Okay.
And
Sounds
Wow.
exciting.
in theology 2, which is kicking my booty.
So you've been doing it for 2 years.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And where are you going to school?
It's called Central Baptist Seminary, and they've got like a women's leadership cohort. So it's just me and a bunch of women, and it's intentionally diverse. And so I love that about my program. I'm actually the minority in my program, which doesn't usually happen. And so it's just been really, I've learned a lot in every way possible.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know you from Addison Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, was it Hope Now? I used to play that one on loop a lot. Mm-hmm. That was like a good one. But what was band life like? What was that like for you?
It was awesome in my 20s.
Yeah, right.
And in my early 30s. And then you hit the threshold where you're just like, this is not fun anymore.
Right.
It was, I loved it. But it was it was just a sort of vagabond life. You know, you were always out on the road. And I was telling the women this story about like getting off the road and not knowing how to cook for myself. And so I realized I got home and I was like, oh, I don't even own an iron. I don't know how to cook. Because all those things that you take for granted, you know, and I think too, I feel like people in their 20s are generally like starting to settle down, make community, and kind of dig roots in. Mm-hmm. And so there's this beauty of like part of my experience is that I can go to cities all over the country and see people. I'm like, oh, they feel like family and I feel welcome at home. But then I go to my own home and I'm like, I don't know anybody here.
I don't fit in here.
I'm so, And so it's been a really big shift going from road life to back, especially in ministry, like music, because you're out playing for other people's churches and you get back and you're like, oh, like I have a church technically, but I don't really go to church here. And so it's just been an interesting journey to like reestablish relationships and routine and rhythm and but I love people, you know, and I think like I think you travel enough and you meet enough people. I've been all over the country. I've done a lot all over the world, but like people are generally good.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah.
Like people are generally like welcoming and kind. And so if anything, being on the road taught me like give people the benefit of the doubt, because for the most part people are doing the best they can. And I think that's the beauty of traveling is that you are exposed to so many different people and you realize like, oh,
that's a good thing.
It doesn't matter where you go, like human nature is flawed, absolutely, but there's more good than there is bad out there, I think.
That's good. It's a good reminder.
Yeah,
I agree.
You know, Valerie has a couple of your books here. Your most recent one was Made Well from a couple years back. And I did read a little bit. I didn't read the book. I read a little bit about it. Look forward to reading it. But I love, you took it from when Christ met the man at the pool and asked him, do you want to be made well?
Right.
Such an interesting question, right?
Isn't it?
That he had that he asked the guy first, do you want to be made well? How did that speak to you? How did that first speak to you?
Well, honestly, that story annoys me. That's one of the stories in the Bible that's always irked me because I'm like, why would you ask if he wants to be made well?
Of course I want to be.
Of course he wants to be made well, you know? And I'm just like, I think that's probably the Western American person in me that wants it fixed and wants it fixed now.
That's right.
And quickly. And that's honestly what both of those books sort of have to do with is this underlying thing of like, I think we are sold a bill sometimes in the church that healing's easy, it's fast, it's overnight, it doesn't require anything. Like Jesus just does his hocus pocus and then boom, everything's all better.
Sure.
And so for my own story, I would say over the past like 10 years, there have been several distinct seasons of unraveling that have been brutal. I mean, more than I thought I could handle or live through. And what I found was that Christians kind of sucked at that. Can I say that on a podcast?
Yes,
you can.
Because everybody would have these sort of cliche, like for instance, when the band ended, people would be like, well, now you can focus on being a mom. And I was like, what have I been doing? Like, you know,
I haven't been a mom.
Exactly. Or like, you know, or just this sort of idea that whatever was going to come next in my life would happen overnight and happen really fast. And like God would tell me just right away.
Got it.
And I remember in that season telling the Lord, like, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'll serve in whatever capacity. And it was so clear as day. God was just like, I'm not giving you an answer. And it was really hard for me because it was disturbing to my faith to be like, what do you mean you're not going to give me an answer? Like,
Sure.
Say, you know, I say that in the book, like we hear this, come to me, all you're weary, I'll give you rest. And I'm like, I think we just switched it to, I'll give you answers.
Yes.
And that's what I really want from you is answers. Like, just give me the answer, fix it, make it better.
Let's go.
Like, yeah, let's go. And so a lot of my journey in these books, my music is about the fact that like, we don't get to shortcut seasons of grief or pain or of unraveling or not knowing what comes next. Like there are genuinely seasons where God is still who God says he is. And I still have no idea what happens tomorrow.
Amen.
Yeah.
I just don't. And I
bookmarked it. Yeah. Well, I hadn't read your book and it's funny timing because your book kind of fits with my life right now. And so I picked it up and couldn't stop reading. So I'm halfway through. You can see my bookmark right here. But
crazy and weird.
I know the timing is just, so you had like, cause literally the first part of the book, you start off with like all this death that happened in your family. I've had a lot of death in my family too, so I could totally relate to it. And so I was literally crying, then laughing, and then crying like within the first 22 pages. I was like, what is this? But the quote that really got me was, I'm invited to be made well, even when the broken things don't get put perfectly back together. Because I feel like sometimes we expect everything to just be put back together, you know, exactly the way it was before when things were really good. Yeah. And so I don't know. I felt like that quote set the tone for the whole book. Yeah. And so my mind kept going back to that one because I don't know, things are hard. And when you feel like they should be better and you're like, you want it back to where it was. And it doesn't always go that way. And the steps to healing are long sometimes.
They are long, right. And to go back to that Bible story, it's like Jesus is like, do you want to be made well? And I think what got me about that was this idea that, okay, so what if the guy wants to be physically healed? Yeah. Which is a prayer that so many people ask when you're in the midst of, you know, physical disease and suffering. But for the first time, it just struck me like, even if he's healed, he's still going to die. Yeah. Like, even if the cancer goes away now, like, you're still going to hit 90 years old. And eventually there is death. Eventually our earth stories end in death. Right. You know, and so I was like, so what else does it look like then to be made well? Because the truth is, like, for as many stories as I've heard from people where God did heal or there was some sort of miracle, what I live in every day and the stories that I hear the most of are about divorce and cancer and babies who didn't make it and diseases that didn't find remission. And I don't mean that in a kind of a downer way. Sure. I mean, so what does it look like then for God to still be God and still be good and faithful? What other ways does he come to make us well and whole and heal us? Because so many of the things that we ask for healing in don't always happen the way we think they're going to happen, you know? And so that's been my journey. It's like, so, okay, who is God then in the midst of that?
So what did you find out?
Fill us in.
Well, I landed on Emmanuel, God with us. And I told this story to the women. My sister buried her daughters. They both died at birth. And she got the word Emmanuel tattooed on her arm. And every time I see it, I get still 5 years later choked up because that's it. Like, we still buried the babies. And yet those experiences should be enough to put all of us in bed where we don't get out again.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there's things that we walk through in all of our stories that are so hard. There is no reason that we should still be functioning, or that we're not all in rehab or in prison or whatever, because we've succumbed to a vice to just numb the pain, to anesthetize it.
Very true. Very true.
But so what I realize is that the reason that I'm not in that place is not because I'm super strong. I'm not. It's because God walked with me and carried me and picked me up and like went before me, behind me. And, you know, Psalms 139 or Psalm 23, any of those where God is like carries us through the valley of the shadow of death.
Right.
It's not the miracle that I wanted, but there is a profound beauty that I've come to know about God that I didn't know in any other season, and it literally gave me life.
That's
like,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Seriously. The whole idea of Emmanuel, God with us, is one of those things that as we continue to grow in our knowledge of God, that becomes more and more awesome. Right? It'd be easy for someone who just accepted Christ to be a beautiful thing. Oh, God's with me. That's a beautiful thing, right? But after 10, 20, 40, 50 years with God, and your idea and understanding of who he is grows, that he's with us, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's a great takeaway. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
And I mean, I think I went to seminary thinking I would I don't know, get way smarter, or I don't know what I was hoping to grasp from it. But what I keep walking away with from every class is like, oh my gosh, this was the plan from the beginning.
Amen.
This wasn't just a backup plan that Jesus would come. Like, we serve a God who is a part of us and has wanted to be so from day one. I mean, even just God hovering over the earth, over the void and the darkness, the Spirit of God was here, like chose to be here, chose to be made known. And so the whole journey through the Bible, you're like, oh, it doesn't matter if you go back to the Israelite people or at the beginning of time or the birth of Jesus. It's like God over and over and over and over and over again showing up.
Amen.
Over and over again.
Yep. I always thought there was an aspect to when Christ said to that man, do you want to be made well? I think there's sometimes in all of us, or certainly a lot of times in most of us, where we don't want to be made well. And I think there has to be that aspect. Do I want to be made well? Am I willing to do what it takes in Christ to be made well? Yes. And I think that's a challenging question for all of us.
I think you address that a little in your book too. Some people they're happy where they're at. You know, people are taking care of them, or I'm okay being grumpy, or, you know, the anger like fuels me. It makes me, you know, do what I need to do. And so you address that a little bit in the book, how some people don't want to be made well.
Don't want to be made well. Right. And I don't think God forces us to be made well. And you're right. There's a lot of participation in our own healing. Sometimes it has to happen.
Yeah.
But I empathize with those people too, because now that I've spent seasons in like really dark, deserty places, you kind of get good at operating there. Like, you know, that place, you know, you get used to whatever it is, the hospital or the broken relationships or whatever it is. And so there's this aspect too of healing that, like, when wholeness and new life is there and it's offered up, it can be a bit scary to claim that and to walk into it. And so I think it's actually a really profound question that Jesus asked.
Yes.
Like, is this really what is this
is
really
it what you want?
Yeah.
It's going to be different.
It's
going to be challenging too.
Exactly.
Where we are is challenging, but this is a whole different challenge. Are you ready? Are you ready to be made well?
Exactly.
It's powerful question.
Yeah.
Well, and I write in there too about, I think maybe towards the beginning of the book, just the beauty too that sometimes we're not able to make that decision for ourselves in the moment. And one of my favorite authors, he tells a story about how he says it was my nurse Norma and my sister who brought me to the psych hospital, who picked me up on my mat and lowered me through the roof to the feet of Jesus, because sometimes we're too sick and we're too tired and so thank God for those moms and dads and pastors and friends in our lives who see us and think she's too sick to even know, and who pick us up and drive us to rehab or drive us to wherever, the police station if they have, wherever it is, that place where we're, they bring us to the church steps, they bring us to the doctor, they go into those places that are terrifying and they literally lift our mats up and they bring us to the feet of the healer, because sometimes we're not even well enough to do it for ourselves. And I think that's those are the people in my story that I look at and I think, thank God you were brave enough and courageous enough to not just shut down and turn a blind eye, but to show up in the midst of my really hard stuff and take me to the healer.
Yeah.
Amen. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
How do we do that? How do we take that step to really get involved with someone else's life to the point where it's an act of love, really, is what you're saying. But how do we do that? What steps do we take to encourage them, to help them move towards healing, if we're seeing it on the outsides?
I seeing it on the outside. I think that's a good question. I think there's several things. One of them is if there's a way to step into somebody's journey and let them know that you're not there to fix them or judge them or that you're a safe person.
Yes.
That kind of maybe opens them up a little bit to the fact that you're just there. You're present.
That's excellent.
And I think showing up in ways that, I don't know, like just being consistent with showing up. And so I've been sick the past 2 years. I've had this illness and I've had 5 surgeries. I've been in the hospital a dozen times. And it's been, it's been so challenging. Because every time they send me home with a catheter in. And so it's just constant pain for 2 years straight.
Wow.
And I would never in a million years text a friend and be like, hey, I literally cannot bend over to do my laundry. But my laundry needed to be done. My trash needed to be taken. And so they would just show up.
Nice.
They didn't ask. They didn't wait for an invitation.
Yeah.
They would just show up at my door. And sometimes annoyingly, sometimes I didn't want to see anybody.
Sure.
And sometimes you'll be met with that. But I think sometimes we play it so safe because we don't want to intrude. We don't want to infringe. We don't want anybody to feel judged. But I think what I've learned through multiple seasons of grief is that sometimes I just need you to show up, whether I want you there or not. And it's been the women that have showed up and been like, I'm doing your laundry, go sit down. I'm taking your trash out. We're here. We're going to mow your yard and we're going to do, and I'm like, I didn't ask. And they're like, wait, we didn't ask either.
We're just here.
There's a beautiful line, right? Of showing up for people, not intruding, but also firmly being like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So I think all things are not for all people.
Right.
And so we can't walk all through people through their grief. So I'm like, what can you do? Do you bake a good casserole? Can you mow a yard? Can you shovel snow? Can you send a gift card? What is it that you're uniquely, do you write cards? Do you write beautiful cards? Send somebody a card. What is it that I can offer?
Right.
That's good. That's a good challenge.
Yeah.
Actually.
I think especially in women's group, we start a lot of meal trains, and I learned a long time ago, cooking is not my spiritual gift. And so I finally decided I'm just not going to do that anymore. So my neighbor had surgery on her hand last year, and I'm like, I can't cook for you, but I will go do whatever you want. And she's like, I need a new bra. And I was like, I got you. I will go to the store. Tell me what size. I will grab it for you.
Right.
She's like, I don't want to send my husband. I was like, I got you. So now I'm her most supportive friend. But but you have to know, you have to just kind of see what people need and just kind of be there for them.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to cook for you.
That's beautiful. Right. And know yourself and what you can offer.
Exactly. Because why would I want to bring you something that's really bad?
Right.
I want you to get better. I don't want you to die of food poisoning. Sorry. So, yeah. But I think, and we talked about earlier being kind, that, I feel like that's a good Christian example too, of just being kind to people and loving people. Yeah. So I try to teach my children that.
That's a good word.
I love
That's excellent. So let's just shift topics for a minute. I'd love to ask you this because you are a speaker, songwriter, author. I'm sure there's a ton of other things. Talk
mom.
to me.
I'm just a mom.
You're just
there
a
you
mom.
go. I'm so interested in the creative process. And so how does that work for you? I've read some of your blogs, some of your other posts. I've read a little bit of your book. Where's it come from? What's the process like for you?
I love that question because I could camp out here all day long.
Go ahead.
I've honestly been really lucky because what has happened for me in a lot of my biggest creative projects or most successful ones, the idea will just come to me. And so for me, those are God moments where I'm like, oh, I didn't come up with that at all, you know? And so for both of those books, the titles came to me. It was just sort of this oh, this is what the book's going to be about. And I actually have a series of children's books that'll come out in the fall.
Oh, fun.
And it was the same thing. I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, I know exactly what it's about. And so I just wrote the name down and that was it. And then I go back and do the work later.
Wow.
And so I think it's different for, for different people, but I think there is sort of the seed at some point, the seed for the song or the book or the piece. And you don't always know exactly how that's going to look. But once you get that like little seed, that's what I try to hang on to, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's the thing I'm supposed to bring to life. I don't know how to get it there yet. Sure. So for instance, one of our Addison Road's biggest songs on radio was the song called What Do I Know of Holy? And I was at a youth camp in Florida with this sort of old man pastor who was preaching. They had him preach in the mornings when the kids were asleep. I mean, like still sleeping. And then the cool pastor preached at nighttime.
Right.
Nice.
And he came in with this like insane message one morning that he was like, the Lord woke me up and told me to rewrite my message, and I don't ever do this. And you could tell like he did not do this.
Right.
And he said, I just want to apologize. I want to apologize because we have been doing this all wrong. We thought we could win you over to God by making a cooler youth building and having more pizza parties and buying more Xboxes for the youth group room and doing the crazier, trips. And he said, what I forgot is that we could have actually just won you over if we told you about God's holiness. And he's like, and I don't think we've done that well. So what, he said something, and he said, I'm supposed to tell you about how holy God is today.
Wow.
And he started like going story after story after story. And each one he'd go, what do I know of holy? What do I know? And as he would say it, I was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
That's a song,
right.
And so it's that moment cool. where that thing rises to the surface where you're like, that's the book that I'm supposed to write, or the song that I'm supposed, or the sermon I'm supposed to create. I think those sort of, and I hang on to those, whatever they are, and then build around it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it could be just a title or an idea around a song, and that's what you stay with. That's what until I stay with. You start to fill in the pieces.
And then the filling in the pieces is the fun part. Yeah. For book writing, you just write out like all your favorite sort of stories, like just put them in a title form. And then I would just lay them out on the floor and be like, okay, these 5 stories all have to do with this. And these 2 stories have to do this. And this, and then you just sort of move it around like a jigsaw puzzle.
That's pretty fun. So is there something in there now that you're thinking about processing?
These kids' books is what I'm working on now, and I'm super excited. I had lunch with a lady, and she said, have you ever thought about writing children's books? And I was like, no, not at all. And she was like, you should really think about it, because I actually brought you to lunch because I would love for you to be, one of our writers. And I was just like, nice. That's interesting. Nope. And then I went home, and then these ideas came to me, and so I'm really excited about it.
That sounds.
I've been working on it for a while.
Can you share any of it?
Yeah. So it's a series. The first book is called I Can Say No. And I'm a reformed people pleaser. At least I'm trying to. I think especially for girls, and especially Christian girls, we have even the double. We're just not taught that we can say no. Yeah. And so we end up doing a lot of things we don't want to do, and we do it resentfully and bitter, with lots of bitterness, because we weren't, and then even when I do say no, I apologize. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I do too. Or I lie. I mean, I think I was taught from a young age, like, I can't go because I'm going to China.
Yeah, I'm washing my hair tonight. I
am currently ill. I'm like, no, I'm not ill. I'm not going to go. It's just a no. Sorry. Whereas a man can say that, and it's almost like a sign of strength that he just says no, and so I think there's this, so I was thinking, what would I want to teach my daughters? I'm like, I want to teach them that that they have control over these really big words. So the words, so it's, I can say no. I can say yes for kids that are a little more timid. Like I can say yes to new friends and new experiences. Nice. And I can say maybe is actually my favorite one. Because it teaches kids to buy some time before they have to make decisions.
Smart.
Wow, that's
great. In a world where everything's super fast paced and kids feel pressure to decide something right away, it gives them I can say maybe. I don't have to answer right away.
That's good.
I don't have
what are
to
the age
pressured.
groups?
We're thinking like it should be K through 4th or 5th grade.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that sounds.
They're rhyming books.
Oh, it's awesome.
Which is kind of fun, but they're all the characters are like older. Cool. 5th, 6th grade.
That's fun.
Yeah, so
really
I'm excited
good.
about it.
So what's the timeline for that?
They come out in September.
Get out.
Yeah,
good for you.
So random.
Very exciting.
I'm really excited.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Music-wise, are you doing anything new musically?
I wish. No, I haven't done anything musically in a while. I've been doing a little bit of stuff with prison ministries off and on.
Cool.
But other than that, like I've been out of the studio for a while.
Yeah.
I keep saying if I inherit a bunch of money and can afford to go back into the studio, I will.
Well, you can come here.
That's it.
We can sing into the
Perfect.
podcast mics.
That would be amazing.
That'd be fun. Wonderful. Well, thanks for doing this.
Well,
so
and
appreciate
thank you
it.
for having me.
You are welcome back anytime. It'd be fun to have you back.
That would be so fun. I'm on Instagram a lot, doing a lot of just parenting, spiritual life stuff. But there's links on my website, jennysimmons.com, for books and music and
Fantastic.
all that stuff.
Very cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was so fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again for joining us. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. This podcast is also available on video. Just head over to YouTube and search for the Chapelcast.